Hello, hello, and welcome back to another fantastic episode of Captain Patriotic. How's everybody been doing? If you guys tuned in last time, I started a new miniseries on the most decorated individual from each branch of the U.S. military. And in my first video, I discussed in major detail the most decorated U.S. Army soldier in our nation's history. Now, that particular honor went to Major Audie Leon Murphy. I know for some of you older folks out there, you recognize the name Audie Murphy. Well, that's because he was a major movie star after World War II ended in the 40s. He actually was in Hollywood while serving in the National Guard part-time. What makes him so special and recognizable is that he earned every major medal and decoration that a member of the U.S. Army could serve while he or she is directly in combat. Now, Murphy served almost 3 years in World War II, starting with the North African campaign and eventually moving up to the Italian campaign, where basically we overthrew Mussolini, before ending his army career in Europe, in Germany, before war ended in 1945. So let's give a major round of applause to Major Murphy for all the decorations that he received during World War II. Here's a picture of all of his medals put together. I want to continue the same tradition today, but this time I would like to focus on the most decorated U.S. Navy sailor in our nation's history. Now, I know a lot of people have had friends and family that have served in the U.S. Navy during different time periods and different conflicts and all that. And to be honest with you guys, it is a very, very popular branch of the U.S. military. I mean, a lot of people love serving in the Navy. In fact, after doing some research and everything, I found out that the U.S. Navy is the second largest military branch out of all the U.S. military forces. It's second only behind the U.S. Army, and for very good reason. A lot of people love it there, and they feel like it's not as strenuous as some of the infantry units in the Army or the Marine Corps. A lot of people just love the Navy for various reasons, and this video is dedicated to all of our U.S. Navy veterans out there. Thank you guys for everything that you do for us on and overseas. Now, the primary role of the U.S. Navy, of course, has been to protect the waters around the United States and around the world in relation to keeping our enemies from invading the mainland U.S. as well as other allied countries that we align ourselves with. In that traditional sense, that's still true to this day, but in the more recent decades, the U.S. Navy has taken on other roles too, such as during the 60s, we specialized in naval special operations units, such as the Navy SEALs that we know it today. Now, in a traditional sense, the U.S. Navy has also had a proud tradition of following our U.S. Marines into battle, and that has been true for over 200 years because few Navy personnel, they actually have the honor and the privilege of serving as corpsmen, basically medical personnel to a platoon or unit of U.S. Marines. And they train as a Marine, they do everything that the Marines do. And basically the job of a corpsman is to tend to wounded Marines and nurse them back to health during their pivotal battles. And finally, the U.S. Navy has the distinct function of having a fleet of battleships, and you might see a bunch of Navy personnel have the privilege of flying Navy helicopters as well as Navy fighter planes in honor of the U.S. Navy. You know, the kind that land on those big, humongous battleships and everything. Now, that is pretty cool to be able to defend the seas in one of those planes and on one of those battleships in general. So, in a nutshell, the U.S. Navy, they're the protectors of the waters, so to say, for the U.S., all of us here at home, as well as for our foreign allies overseas, too. And without them, we may not feel quite as safe as we would today. So, over the years, there have been thousands and thousands and maybe millions of Navy veterans over its 200 plus year history. In fact, a lot of famous people have served in the U.S. Navy before. In fact, quite a few of the U.S. presidents have actually served in the Navy as well. Some of those notable people are John F. Kennedy, George H.W. Bush, who was a naval fighter pilot in the Pacific during World War II, and Jimmy Carter, who made a whole career out of the Navy. So, guys, the person in the Navy that has the honor of being the most distinguished and decorated U.S. Navy sailor is none other than James Elliott Williams. That's right, Boatswain's mate first class, James Elliott Williams. Williams was born in Fort Mill, South Carolina on November 13th, 1930, and 2 months later, him and his family moved a little ways down to Darlington, South Carolina. It was there where he spent a lot of his childhood years and his youth and teenage years growing up and going to school and everything. In fact, he was known to be a pretty athletic young man at that time. Well, it was on August 8th, 1947, that he decides to enlist in the U.S. Navy, and he does so at the age of 16. Now, after he enlists in 1947, he ends up getting his basic training and all that at the Naval Center in San Diego, California, where he would serve for almost 20 years, where he served in both the Korean and Vietnam Wars. Now, speaking of the Korean War, this past couple of weeks marks the 71st anniversary of both the landing and Battle of Incheon as well as the Second Battle of Seoul. Now, during the Battle of Incheon, that was when U.S. forces, primarily U.S. Marines, landed on the western coast of Incheon, Korea, basically in an effort to stop the North Korean onslaught way deep in South Korea. We were going to cut them off at that point. That was the main goal of the Marines, was to invade and take over Incheon and fight to regain control of the coastal stronghold from the North Koreans. And once they took over Incheon, Marines continued to advance on and regain control of the South Korean capital of Seoul from the communist North Koreans. Now, this was bitter fighting for our Marines and other U.S. forces and UN personnel that were fighting this particular battle, because, like at the Battle of Way City, it was a house-to-house, block-by-block battle to regain control. But nonetheless, toward the end of September 1950, the Marines had liberated Seoul and caused the North Koreans to retreat back up into North Korea. Anyway, getting back to Williams' career, he served off the coast of Korea, where he was basically in charge of ferrying Marines and other soldiers into different parts of Korea to initiate battles and to bring reinforcements and everything. After the Korean War ended, Williams decides to stay in the Navy and make a career out of it. In fact, it was in 1960 that Williams served aboard the USS Little Rock until April of 1963. In fact, in June of 1962, his enlistment was up and he decides to re-enlist in the Navy right there on that ship, which he did. So in the 60s, it was very quiet for him, at least for a while. Of course, in the early to mid 60s, Vietnam is really starting to make headlines in the news, and eventually we decide to send U.S. forces to aid the South Vietnamese and all that good stuff. In April 1966, Williams receives orders to go to Vietnam. Now, at this particular point in his naval career, he has the enlisted rank of Petty Officer First Class. Once he arrives in Vietnam, Williams is assigned to the River Patrol Force River Squadron 5 in command of River Patrol Boat 105. The force's main objective while in Vietnam was basically to intercept Viet Cong convoys that were carrying arms and guns and ammunition as well as supplies and other food to the enemy in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. And while they were trying to pursue these guys, their other main objective was basically to make sure that the riverways and the canals were safe for innocent and friendly boats in the area. October 31st, 1966 was perhaps the crowning moment of Williams' naval career. In fact, Williams at the time was commanding PBR 105 alongside another PBR searching for Viet Cong guerrillas operating in an isolated area of the Mekong Delta when all of a sudden Viet Cong forces manning two sampans opened fire on the American ships. Now, while Williams and his men neutralized one of the sampans, the other one escaped into a nearby canal. The PBRs gave chase and soon found themselves in a beehive of enemy activity as VC opened fire on them with rocket-propelled grenades as well as small arms fire from the enclosed riverbanks. Now, Williams distinguishes himself greatly here, and in many more ways than others. In fact, Williams repeatedly led the PBRs against concentrations of enemy junks and sampans, and also called in for support from the heavily armored UH-1B Huey helicopters. When that help arrived, he kicked off another attack in the failing light, and as a result of the 3-hour battle that ensued, the U.S. Naval Force killed 1,000 Viet Cong guerrillas, destroyed over 50 vessels, and disrupted a major enemy logistic operation. It was for all of these actions that I just described that Williams was awarded the Medal of Honor. The Medal of Honor was not his only major recognition for his service during Vietnam. 2 months later, in January of 1967, he also received the Navy Cross. His citation reads, and I quote, "The President of the United States of America takes pleasure in presenting the Navy Cross to Boatswain's Mate First Class James Elliott Williams, United States Navy, for extraordinary heroism on January 15, 1967, while serving with River Section 531, River Squadron 5, Task Force 116, and friendly foreign forces during combat operations against communist insurgent forces on the Mekong River in the Republic of Vietnam. As patrol officer of a combat riverboat patrol, Petty Officer Williams stopped a major enemy supply movement across the Nam Thon branch of the Mekong River. He directed his units to the suspected crossing area and was immediately taken under intense hostile fire from fortified positions and from along the riverbanks. After coordinating Vietnamese artillery support and U.S. Air Force airstrikes, Petty Officer Williams courageously led his 3 PBRs back into the hazardous river to investigate and destroy the enemy's sampans and supplies. Blistering fire was again unleashed upon his forces. Frequently exposing himself to enemy fire, he directed his units in silencing several automatic weapons positions and directed one PBR to investigate several sampans which could be seen, while the other PBRs provided cover fire. Almost immediately, the enemy renewed their fire in an effort to force the PBRs away from the sampans. Petty Officer Williams ordered the destruction of the sampan and the extraction of all of his units. During the fierce firefight following the temporary immobilization of one of the units, Petty Officer Williams was wounded, though despite his painful injuries, he was able to lead his patrol back through the heavy enemy fire. His patrol had successfully stopped a crossing attempt of 3 heavy weapons companies, totaling nearly 400 men, had accounted for 16 enemy killed in action, 20 wounded, the destruction of 9 enemy sampans and junks, 7 enemy structures, and 2,400 pounds of enemy rice. By his outstanding display of decisive leadership, his unlimited courage in the face of heavy enemy fire, and his utmost devotion to duty, Petty Officer Williams upheld the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Now, the Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross are not the only medals and decorations that Williams received for his 20-year career in the Navy. Some of his other medals that he received include the Enlisted Small Craft Insignia, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Navy and Marine Corps medals, 3 Bronze Star medals, 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Navy and Marine Corps Commendation medals, a Navy Combat Action Ribbon, a Navy Presidential Unit Citation, a Navy Unit Commendation, the Navy Good Conduct Medal, the Navy Expeditionary Medal, the China Service Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, the Korean Service Medal with 2 Bronze Stars, an Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, the Vietnam Service Medal with 2 Bronze Stars, the Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross with Gold Star and Palm, the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation, the Republic of Vietnam Meritorious Unit Citation with Palm, the United Nations Korean Medal, the Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal, the Korean War Service Medal, and the Craftmaster Badge. It was on May 14th, 1968 that he was presented with the Congressional Medal of Honor by President Lyndon B. Johnson, and he rightfully deserved this honor too. In fact, 9 years later, in 1977, he was given the honorary rank of Chief Boatswain's Mate. After he was honorably discharged from the U.S. Navy, in 1969, he was appointed a U.S. Marshal for South Carolina, where he served in that capacity until May of 1977. After he served his time as U.S. Marshal for South Carolina in 1977, he actually transferred to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, where he basically served as an arms instructor and various other roles until May of 1979. Well, it was then that the court appointed him U.S. Marshal for South Carolina once again, where he served in that capacity until April of 1980. Well, it was after that particular time that he was appointed to another position, but this time it was in Washington, D.C., with the U.S. Marshal Service Headquarters. In that particular role, he served as Programs Manager, Health and Safety, and In-District Training Officer, where he served until his full retirement from the U.S. Marshal Service in the early 90s. he lived a pretty quiet life after that, and in fact, he had 7 grandchildren by the time he retired. And that was until 1999 when he passed away on October 13th, the Navy's birthday. After he passes away, he's actually buried with full military honors in Florence National Cemetery in Florence, South Carolina, close to where he grew up. So guys, this was pretty dang cool of a person. I mean, he did a lot in such a short time. The fact that he served in 2 wars, that was pretty impressive in itself, and what kind of dedication and leadership he performed during his time in the U.S. Navy, that was really impressive in itself. I think this guy runs pretty close to and well-deserved honor of being the most decorated Navy sailor out there. If you guys have any more questions about his life or have any comments, please feel free to leave them down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in, and please stick around for next time.